Welcome to On the Moneyline, a podcast by MMA Play 365. I'm Newsome and I'm here to give you the breakdowns and predictions for this weekend's event at UFC Vegas 55, which is headlined by Holm versus Ketlen Vieira. But just before we get into those breakdowns, as always, there's going to be a Base AI recap video from last weekend. That's our UFC prediction software. Last weekend at UFC Vegas 54, there was a hidden gem inside there as well, which was found in the co-main event. So make sure you check out our Base AI recap, which is in its own Base AI playlist on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/MMA Play 365. But straight into the breakdowns here in the main event, as I've already mentioned, Holm versus Ketlen Vieira. Now, Holm last time out looked absolutely phenomenal against Aldana, to the point where you have got to question how many more of those performances that she's going to have left in her. She is getting up there in age, but she's also a veteran in the UFC as well. She's well-rounded, and like I said, because she is getting up there in age and she's been around for a long time at this point, you do have to question how many of those performances she's got left, because it was absolutely flawless. It was phenomenal, very well-rounded as well. Now, with Ketlen Vieira, she's going to pose different problems than what Aldana posed. And one of those problems is, well, Aldana was predominantly a boxer, so she loved gauging range, she loved fighting at her own pace and sliding in and out of range as and when she can, but she didn't get that against Holm. But what Vieira offers that Aldana couldn't was a good grappling game. She's a top-side Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu phenom. She's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She's also a national wrestling champion in Brazil as well. So where Aldana was stuck is the fact that she couldn't really get a striking going and flowing because Holm was threatening with the takedowns and top control, and she was so worried about getting taken down that she couldn't let her strikes go. Whereas with Ketlen Vieira, it's not the same. Ketlen Vieira probably won't mind too much, or at least as much as Aldana, by getting taken down, because she can work some Jiu-Jitsu, try for a submission or try and stand back up, or sweep and reverse. She's got some really good sweeps, which obviously allows her to reverse position. So Ketlen Vieira won't be as hesitant throwing her strikes as what Aldana was, because she's not going to be as worried about getting taken down. Now, this to me is a very close fight, and I think the betting line is off. I think the line should be much shorter, because Ketlen Vieira, even though it was a close fight, her last time out against Miesha Tate, it was a 5-round fight. She answered some cardio questions that I personally had of her as well, but she was just busting Miesha Tate up, and Miesha Tate was darting in, just like Holm was darting in against Aldana. So I feel that Ketlen Vieira is going to be much more patient moving forwards against Holm. Holm's counter-attacking might not be as there as what it was against Aldana, who was trying to be more aggressive in parts. Ketlen Vieira is much more patient on the feet with her boxing. And then when Holm's bursting in, I think Ketlen Vieira's got some serious power. She's going to be able to crack her as well. So I just think all these things that I've mentioned are going to make this fight relatively close, to the point where I think that at some point there is going to be a changing of the guard here, and I think that Holm is going to run out of those performances like she did against Aldana. And I do believe it's going to be in a spot like this against Ketlen Vieira, who's a young fighter, who's good everywhere. Like I said, good boxer from a striking perspective, good BJJ player. She's got good wrestling as well. She's had a blip in her career already, but she's looking to overcome that. All these things put in place, I do think that this is the fight that the changing of the guard happens. So for that reason, I'm siding with the underdog, and I'm picking Ketlen Vieira to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got a fun and explosive one. We've got Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Michel Pereira. Now, again, like I've already said, this is going to be a good fight of two very big welterweights. Both welterweights don't look like welterweights. You know, Ponzinibbio is huge for the division, and Michel Pereira, you know, has been questioned by a lot of people of how he even gets anywhere close to 170 pounds. But this is a good fight. I do think that Michel Pereira, though, has definitely got some advantages here. For a start, he's on a good run of form. He's putting wins together. He's not this same fighter, or at least we don't see a lot of it like we've saw previously with the backflips and, you know, all the crazy somersaults and everything that he does inside the cage. You know, he can show slight moments of that, but you can really tell that he's worked on his game to develop, to try and get that sort of stuff out. And because of that, he's actually really calm, patient and technical on the feet striking. But in this fight with Ponzinibbio, he's definitely going to be tested from that perspective. I just feel that Ponzinibbio, he's had a couple of performances now where he came back from a long layoff, fought Miguel Baeza, he had a war with Baeza. In my opinion, I think he probably changed Baeza in regards to his career because of how much damage Baeza took from Ponzinibbio. But then after that fight, he had a fight with Jeff Neal and he was a little bit hesitant striking, and that's where I've got concerns here, because Michel Pereira offers a similar explosive, powerful striking game as what Jeff Neal offered. So I do think that although that fight was close between Ponzinibbio and Neal was just able to pull away with volume, and I think that's what's going to be able to happen here. But the difference is here, I think that Michel Pereira has also got a plan B with his wrestling. I think topside he's not going to be able to have a massive amount of control, but if he gets a couple of takedowns with 30 seconds, 40 seconds here and there, topside control, then I do think that that's going to aid the game of Pereira, and again it could potentially make Ponzinibbio a little hesitant striking if he's concerned about getting taken down. But if Pereira doesn't use the takedowns, I think that he's tall, he's long, he's going to be able to use a nice technical striking game, whilst Ponzinibbio is trying to come forwards, being overly aggressive, overexerting himself, swinging. I think Pereira, if he keeps everything nice and tight, I think he's got a good fight ahead of him here. And like I said, he's got that plan B of the wrestling and topside grappling should he want to use it. So for those reasons, I'm picking Michel Pereira to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got a fun one between Chidi and Njokuani and Dusko Todorovic. And stylistically, I think it favours Njokuani. Njokuani is predominantly a striker, a kickboxer, but he's very good at moving backwards, striking moving backwards as well as he is moving forwards. And that's key here because Dusko Todorovic is aggressive. He likes to come forwards. He likes to pin his opponents against the cage. He's got that dirty, ugly, gritty, grinding style of fighting with takedowns and good topside grappling. But I feel that everything that Todorovic does well, Njokuani is going to have an answer for. So Todorovic moving forwards, being aggressive, I think Njokuani can counter-strike perfectly fine. I think Dusko Todorovic, when he gets into the clinch positions, looking to tie up with Njokuani. Njokuani's got really good knees to the body, he's got good elbows to the head, and I think those sort of combinations within the clinch, within the knees and within the elbows is going to be enough to really start hurting Dusko Todorovic, if not to the head, at least to the body, just taking a bit of wind out of him. He can then reverse position. And then Dusko Todorovic, the big red flag that's always been the case for him. And you can see he's trying to fix it, but he does fall back into the holes. And that's with his striking defense. His hands are low, his chin's high. He tries to evade strikes by leaning backwards and bobbing and weaving, opposed to, just putting his hands up, blocking the punches with his arms or blocking the kicks with his arms or his hands, and then just moving out of range and starting again. So I think defensively, Todorovic is flawed. With the striking style of Njokuani, even moving forwards, it's all straight punches down the middle. That's the perfect style of striker to catch somebody that's trying to evade in bad ways like Todorovic does. So I think Njokuani is just going to have a lot of advantages here over Todorovic. The one thing he's got to be careful of is Todorovic. You can't ignore that he does have power. He's not got a reputation for being a knockout artist, but he can definitely floor you in one punch. So Njokuani's got to mind his P's and Q's from that perspective. And Njokuani is going to be made to work here because I do think he's going to be fighting backwards a lot. I do think he's going to have to be doing some defensive work in the clinch. But outside of that, stylistically, I think it's a good fight for him. So I'm picking Chidi and Njokuani to win this fight. And in the next fight, this is actually a fun fight in the women's division as well. We've got Polyana Viana versus Tabatha Ricci. And it's a fun fight because both fighters are very good grapplers, black belts in BJJ. They like to be on the mat, grappling, looking for submissions, looking for control time. But they have got a difference in style on the mat. So Tabatha Ricci definitely prefers to be topside, whereas with Viana, she definitely prefers, to me at least, to be on her back, looking for submissions, looking for the arm bars and triangles, which she's hit so many times. And she probably doesn't love being on her back, but when she's getting that many submissions off her back, she's probably just cool with the fact that she's going to be taken down and it gives her a chance to finish the fight. Now on the feet, Tabatha Ricci is definitely more of a pressure boxer, so she'll come in looking to close the distance. She's 5'1", quite short, whereas Viana's quite long and tall. She'll have a Muay Thai style on the feet. So even though they're very similar fighters, there's clashes in the individual disciplines of mixed martial arts as well, which is going to make it a fun fight. Ultimately, I do think this fight is going to be won and lost on the mat though. I think on the feet, they're both going to do decent work. I think that they're both very similar in regards to skill sets and qualities. So even though Ricci's the boxer, Viana's the Muay Thai fighter, I don't think either have got a massive edge on the feet. But Ricci's going to be shooting for takedowns. Her wrestling seems to be better than Viana's, and I think she's going to be able to get the takedowns. It's just, will Viana get her out of there? Like, she's got many fighters out of there when she's on her back, and there's definitely a possibility of that, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Viana submit Ricci. However, Viana is more of a guard player, and I'd never really like to pick these fighters, even though she might be very good in that guard. I just feel that the better the level of competition that Viana starts facing, the less likely she is of locking these arm bars up from guard and triangles up from guard. And eventually you come a little bit unstuck at this level in the UFC. And I think this might be one of those fights where Ricci has got the BJJ herself to remain safe from these arm bars and triangles from bottom coming from Viana. And because of that, she should be able to be comfortable on top, get a registered position on top, a position where she feels comfortable, and just be able to do good work with Viana on bottom. And I think it might take Viana a couple of rounds to realise she's probably not going to be able to submit Ricci off her back. And if that's right, then she's probably going to be a couple of rounds down by that point and then chasing towards the end of the third. I do think it's a close fight. I'm not 100% convinced that this is the fight Viana does get nullified with that, with those submissions in guard off her back. But I do think there's a high possibility of it. So for those reasons, I am going to side with Tabatha Ricci to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Eryk Anders versus Jun-Yong Park. And this fight, I think, is going to be tough for Eryk Anders. I like Eryk Anders as a fighter. He's got power, he's got boxing, he's got that athletic, explosive nature about him, former footballer, or American footballer, I'll call it in England. But yeah, Eryk Anders has got a good explosive style. And I think he's going to be very good in regards to mixing things up and looking to wrestle and looking to strike and blending everything together. But the problem he's got with Jun-Yong Park is Jun-Yong Park's a really developed fighter, and I feel that everything that Eryk Anders is going to try and achieve in this fight, Jun-Yong Park's going to be able to match him and just better him, because although I think Anders has definitely got, well, I don't think he has definitely got the power advantage here, knocking Jun-Yong Park out is not easy. It took Gregory Rodriguez, a big guy with huge power, a number of times cracking Jun-Yong Park clean before he knocked him out. So I don't think Eryk Anders has got that on a plate. I think Jun-Yong Park's durable. So outside of Eryk Anders knocking Jun-Yong Park out, I think that the striking here is going to be very close. Jun-Yong Park tends to fight from a point scoring perspective, and because of that he has a volume advantage. I think that's definitely going to put him in a good spot in this fight against Eryk Anders, who can lack on volume massively. And then when it comes to the wrestling, Jun-Yong Park's developed really well here, to the point where he's difficult to take down. If you do take him down, he can get back up to his feet, but he'll re-wrestle as well, and he'll look to put you on your back. And this is what I think is going to happen with the fight. I think that Eryk Anders is going to try and mix things up early. I think he's going to try and knock Park out. I think he's going to struggle knocking him out because of the durability. So then he's going to lower his volume. He's going to look for an entry into a takedown. He's going to try and take him down. I think he's going to struggle there. And I do think that the cardio of Park as well, that's a big advantage for him in this fight. So I think, again, just putting everything together, I think Park's going to be able to just simply out-volume Eryk Anders from a numbers perspective. I think that he's going to be able to score takedowns the longer the fight goes on. I don't think those takedowns will come easy or early from Jun-Yong Park, but the longer this fight goes on, I just think he's going to grow more and more into the fight. And if he has a good first round, you could end up probably seeing him taking a 30-27. So I think Eryk Anders stylistically is in a tough matchup where he is going to come unstuck in parts and just have slight issues throughout the fight. Because of that, I'm picking Jun-Yong Park to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Joseph Holmes versus Alen Amedovski. Now, again, this is a clash of styles in regards to both fighters striking, because Amedovski is a very forward pressure, aggressive fighter that will come forwards looking to knock you out, looking for those power shots. He starts at 100 miles an hour. And with Amedovski, one of the big concerns is the fact that he's never really seen past late in round 2 into round 3, and that's a concern at this level in the UFC, because if he doesn't get stopped earlier, if he doesn't stop the fight early, we've got no idea how he's going to look later in a fight. Whereas with someone like Joseph Holmes has some early finishes as well, but even though he tired in his last fight, he was really made to work hard, and I don't think that Amedovski is going to be able to put that hard work on him as Pickett put on Joseph Holmes last time out. And I think that that's going to allow the cardio to be better of Holmes here should the fight go late. But Holmes is tall, he's long, he's rangy. From a striking perspective, he's just got to mind his P's and Q's defensively, because Amedovski is going to come forward hard early on. He's going to look to close the distance, get inside of that range and land something on the inside to knock Holmes out. But Holmes has shown some durability as well, so that's not a massive concern here. I think Holmes is going to be able to find his range the longer the fight goes on. I think he's going to be able to put Amedovski behind his jab. I think he might even be able to use some wrestling. And if he does get Amedovski down, I think that the jiu-jitsu game of Holmes is going to be too much for Amedovski to deal with Amedovski being on his back as well. So I think that Holmes should have every box checked here, should be in the key word, because he's going to have to weather that storm. He's going to have to mind his P's and Q's early on and make sure that Amedovski doesn't put him out early in this fight. But after he weathers that storm, which I do think he will, I do believe that Joseph Holmes is the better technical striker. I think the wrestling is quite close, but if you can get topside on Amedovski, I think the jiu-jitsu is an advantage, topside jiu-jitsu of Joseph Holmes as well. So for those reasons, I'm picking Joseph Holmes to win this fight. And in the next fight, this is an interesting one. We've got Parker Porter versus Jailton Almeida. And yes, you've heard that right. Jailton Almeida is a fighter with a ton of hype right now. He sits as a -600, 700, even -800 favourite in this spot. And this is a fight where Jailton Almeida's moving up in weight to fight at heavyweight against Parker Porter on short notice. So the dude is not only an absolute phenom in regards to his BJJ and grappling, high-level black belt, but the dude is also absolutely a savage to step up and short notice to fight someone like Parker Porter. And yes, you look at the stats, Jailton Almeida is going to be 6'3", Parker Porter's only 6 foot, but Parker Porter is big, he's wide, he's a 265 pounder naturally. I think he probably cuts down to 265 pounds as well. So he's going to have a huge weight advantage over Almeida, but Almeida doesn't care. And the reason Almeida doesn't care is because he's got a massive advantage in the jiu-jitsu here. He's just got to get Parker Porter down, and that's going to be the difficult part, simply because of the weight. But remember, Almeida's probably hitting the weights himself now. He's probably building up a lot of muscle mass because he's not having to have that cut to 205. So he's probably going to come into this fight very strong, very physical. He's going to be able to get Parker Porter down, even if it's not on the first attempt or the second attempt. He's going to eventually be able to get him down, and when he does get him down, it's probably not going to last too much longer after that point before Jailton Almeida either pounds him out or submits him. Parker Porter's really got to keep his distance here. He's got to stay on the outside. He's got to use his speed the best he can, because he's quite a light heavyweight fighter, but with Jailton Almeida coming from light heavyweight, he's probably going to have a speed advantage as well. Parker Porter's got to use volume from the outside, stick a jab out there, but I just don't think he's going to be able to do that consistently for 3 rounds. I think at some point Jailton Almeida is going to get him down with time to work, and like I said, I think the fight's going to be over quite soon after Jailton Almeida takes him down. He either pounds him out or submits him. So I'm picking Jailton Almeida to win this fight. And in the next fight, this is probably one of my most anticipated fights I'm looking forward to. We've got Omar Morales versus Uros Medic. And this is really interesting. And actually, last fight with Uros Medic, you know, I think that Uros Medic is or could be a very, very good fighter with developments, with improvements. And I said that last fight before he had the fight with Jailton Turner. And what we've actually seen from Jailton Turner since then is just an absolute beast, to the point where I'm now not putting too much stock in the fact that Medic got beat by Turner. You look at what Turner did last time out, he's going to be a phenomenal fighter, Turner. I think he's going to be a fighter in the rankings that's going to do really well. So I don't think you can put too much stock in what happened in that Medic fight. I still think Medic is a good fighter. However, here, I do believe that stylistically, I think Omar Morales is going to cause him some problems. Medic has definitely got this deceptive power. He can land strikes that don't look like there's too much behind them and put you out. And again, that could happen here. But the thing is, Omar Morales has shown a really good level of durability. He's been cracked hard to the head, to the body, to the legs. And the dude just does not break with strikes. You've literally got to find that button and put him out, whether that be on the jaw, behind the ear, on the temple. You just got to find where his button is that puts him out cold, because I just don't think that he's got any durability issues at all, and that's going to put him in good stead in this fight, because there is going to be exchanges where both fighters are landing hard punches, and it's a fight that I don't believe is going to be won and lost on the mat. If we are talking about wrestling and grappling, I think Omar Morales is absolutely the more likely fighter to shoot a takedown and get some top side control. He does that opportunistically, but opportunistically is the key word there. Omar Morales is a striker. He's going to come forwards. He's going to look to try and, exchange with Medic. And I don't know if Medic is going to be able to have a fast-paced fight like, for example, Omar Morales and Gabriel Benitez. If that's Medic instead of Benitez, I don't know if Medic is going to look like Benitez looked in round 3, and that's purely because we don't know, because Medic is a fighter that again finishes a lot of his fights early on, and I like to back him in those fights where I believe that his opponent might be able to be taken out early on. But I don't think, like I've said, I don't think Omar Morales is. He's got good durability, he's been in wars, he'll land strikes in exchanges with you, he's not afraid to take a couple, to land a couple, and I think he's just going to be able to methodically break Uros Medic down. I think the fight is probably going to go a little bit later unless Medic does find that button and knocks him out. But outside of that, I think Morales is going to be able to chip away and chip away. I think we'll definitely get to see where the 3-round cardio is at of Uros Medic in this fight, but I do think that Morales is just going to, like I said, methodically break him down just by being tough and then firing back with tough strikes. So for those reasons, I'm picking Omar Morales to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Jonathan Martinez versus Vince Morales. And talking of fights that are likely to be won and lost on the feet, this is another one of those fights. Both fighters have got decent wrestling at this level when they choose to use it, but again, it's opportunistic wrestling. But I do think that both of these fighters have been taken down before and have got decent enough jiu-jitsu to stand back up from one another as well. So even if there is some wrestling and grappling mixed in, A, I don't think it's going to last long enough, and B, it's definitely not going to be significant enough to make this fight be won and lost from those positions. The fight's going to be won and lost on the feet. And I think that although Vince Morales is going to be competitive here, I do think that he's going to have moments where he's looking good. I think he might even be able to sneak a very close round at some point. I just think that Jonathan Martinez is the better technical striker, is the faster mover. He switches stance as well. He's more varied in regards to the strikes that he throws. And he gauges range management and distance management really well. Couple that with the speed advantage that he's likely going to have here. And I do think he's going to cause Vince Morales a lot of problems. I don't think it's going to be one of those fights where Martinez just absolutely whitewashes him. I do think a lot of the rounds are going to be close, but I just think Martinez is going to be very visibly edging those rounds ever so slightly throughout the fight. Also, from a finishing perspective, I think Martinez is the more likely fighter to finish than Vince Morales as well. So putting everything together, I'm picking Jonathan Martinez to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Chase Hooper versus Felipe Colares. And talking about fights being won and lost on the feet, I think this is going to be a fight that's won and lost on the mat. Chase Hooper definitely is going to want this fight on the mat, although we can see the striking improvements with Hooper. He's been working a lot with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, so his striking naturally is going to get better. I still think he's a million miles away of where he needs to be to start making these fights more comfortable in the UFC, because yeah, sure, he's got a good ground game, but when that doesn't work and when his opponents know that he's going to be relentless, doing everything he can to get those fights to the mat, his striking is going to be tested, and it needs to be at a level of a UFC caliber fighter, and I'm just not convinced it is. However, he is very young. We haven't seen him in a year. He could come into this fight and look like a completely different striker. We've seen that many times over as well. When fighters are this young and in development process, a year out is a massive amount of time. However, we can only go from what we've seen in previous fights in tape, and from what I've seen in previous fights in tape, I think Felipe Colares is the better striker here. I also think he's the better wrestler, and if he gets down to the mat, Felipe Colares is a difficult and tricky fighter to deal with on the mat from a BJJ perspective, to the point where Chase Hooper's just not going to go in there and knee bar him or leg lock him or anything like that. I mean, if he does, I'm going to be surprised, but it's just Chase Hooper's going to find those submissions on fighters that aren't that savvy on the mat, or aren't as wise on the mat as Chase Hooper. But Felipe Colares is a BJJ black belt himself. He's been around the game for many years, and I think he's going to be able to nullify anything that Chase Hooper does on the mat. And because of that, I think that Felipe Colares could have some decent top control time here. I think Chase Hooper, the longer the fight goes on, could end up getting a little bit stuck. And then when the moments of the fight are on the feet, I think Felipe Colares is just going to be the more comfortable striker. I think Chase Hooper, naturally working with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, is going to be trying to fire long kicks from the outside. But I think Felipe Colares is going to be able to step into range, land good punches in boxing range, and potentially either cause Hooper to try and take him down or take him down himself. Maybe sweep or reverse in a scramble. I just think that Chase Hooper isn't going to have his way over Felipe Colares in this fight like he's had against other fighters pre-UFC. And like I said, we've seen Chase Hooper struggle in the UFC as well in these types of fights where he's just fighting somebody that's savvy on the mat, that knows what they're doing, and then Hooper comes a little unstuck, he runs out of ideas. The one thing I will say here though is, with Felipe Colares, he can slow down in fights in the third round. That might be a window of opportunity for Chase Hooper to take advantage of, to try and get the fight down in round 3 and submit him whilst he's tired. That's a possibility. But outside of that, I just think that Felipe Colares is good enough on the mat to be able to deal with Chase Hooper to the point of not just defending, but being able to attack as well. And on the feet, Felipe Colares is the better striker. So I'm picking Felipe Colares to win this fight. And in the final fight of this podcast, we've got Elise Reed versus Sam Hughes. Now, this is a fight where I do think it's going to be very close. I'm sure it opened as a pick'em, but money's come back in on Elise Reed, pushing her out into the favourite spot. I'm not sure I quite agree with that. Both fighters are coming off really good wins as underdogs as well. You know, Elise Reed beating Corey McKenna at UFC London was impressive, and that was clear. And then Sam Hughes beating Estela Nunes clearly as well. She was a big underdog in that fight. So both fighters are coming in with a ton of confidence where they've just come off wins where people expected them to lose. Now, Elise Reed, I think, is more cleaner with the technique, and I do believe the fight is going to be won and lost on the feet, by the way, in regards to the striking. Like I say, I think Elise Reed is more cleaner on the feet striking, but Sam Hughes has got that dog in her where she'll mix in some takedowns as well. I do think that even if she does take Elise Reed down, she'll probably be able to get back up, unless she tires like Nunes did. But like I say, I think the fight's going to be won and lost on the feet. But I like the dog in Sam Hughes. I think Sam Hughes, she comes forward aggressively, very Darren Elkins style, where she'll get hit a couple of times, but if she's making the fight ugly and scrappy, that's where she likes to fight. And although Elise Reed, like I said, is cleaner, I think that Sam Hughes's style with her, that, like I said, that dog in her making fights scrappy, is enough to be able to wipe that clean technique from Elise Reed and make the fight be fought in the way that Sam Hughes wants to fight. So for those reasons, I'm picking Sam Hughes to win this fight. And that's all for this episode of the podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, I really appreciate the subscriptions to the channel, the likes to the video. If you want to leave a comment, tell me who you're betting on, tell me who your predictions are. It's me that answers those in the chat, so I'll definitely jump in there. We can have a conversation for sure. If you're betting on the night, good luck with your bets. I hope you crush the bookies. I'm Newsome. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next week.